course, to have the right word, the right expression. We even spent some days just exchanging translation from a poem of Joaquin Sabina. So she is really the key element in the translation of the book. I should also thank Bernhard and Cami for being present here now as panelists, and also my son Martin, who was the designer of the cover of the book, and also some colleagues in the diplomatic service of Peru, especially in Washington and Guatemala, who were the persons who looked for some of the elements that I needed to sustain some of the arguments that you will hear in the presentation. Well, let's follow a little bit this PowerPoint that gives you an idea of what is contained in the book. Let's do the first. Okay, the origin of the word Pisco, it's pre-Columbian. That's before the Spaniards arrived to America, to South America. The Pisco is a Quechua word that means birds, and if you have been there sometime, you will realize that it's the perfect name for the place, because there are thousands and thousands of birds in that area of coastal Peru. And the name that was used by the Incas before the Spaniards was kept by the Spaniards later on in that area of the coast of Ica in southern Peru. What the image that you see here is the image of the first map that was made of Peru. This map was made in wait a little bit. This map was made in 1584 by a cartographer named Diego Méndez. And this map was part of the atlas made here in what is now Belgium by the famous cartographer Ortelius. The map appears in the third edition, starting in the third edition of the Atlas of Ortelius. Let's go to the next slide, please. In the case of documents, Lorenzo Huerta, who is a great researcher from the University Ricardo Palma in Peru, he found some years ago the first document that mentions the spirit, not with the name Pisco, but the production of a spirit in Peru. This document is from 1613, and it's the document where a Greek person, Pedro Manuel, the Greek, who used to live there in Ica, leaves as an inheritance part of his goods, and one part was 30 jars of spirit. So you could imagine how valuable was this product for a person to put as part of the legacy to his sons and daughters, this 30 jars of spirit. As I said, this is the very first mention that we have up to now in Peru about the production of the spirit. Next, please. But by the end of the 17th century, already exists a very dynamic trade of Pisco between different provinces in the southern coastal Peru and Lima. Why? Because Lima, Callao was the main port in that area of the Pacific. So all the small ports send their products to Callao in order to be shipped in larger ships and from there distributed to the whole of the Spanish America. As you will see in this this chart, the amount of Pisco spirit that was sent from Pisco to Lima to Callao in the year 1680 was almost 11,000 clay jars. That gives you the whole idea of the enormous production of the spirit in the southern part of Lima. At that time, the main export was wine, but 1/3 was Pisco. In the subsequent years, the proportion is reversed because the trade between Callao and many areas of America was prohibited by the Spanish crown. So the people who produce wine start to transform the wine in spirit, which it's better to be kept. It's smaller in volume compared to wine, and was traded, also had the possibility to be traded later on. The next, the next slide, please. Here in this second chart, you can see that in the beginning of 18th century, between the years 1701 and 1704, Peru was already an exporter of spirit to Chile. In those 4 years, there are statistics that were found by an historian, a Peruvian historian, Mr. Moreira Pasoldan, in the 1960s, and you will see that the clay jars of spirit coming from Peru went to Valparaíso, to Valdivia, to Concepcion, the 3 main ports in Chile. So there was a steady export from Peru towards Chile of the spirit. But what we are dealing with in the book is when and how this beverage start to be called Pisco. And you will see in the next slide that the first reference that we have found about the name Pisco, aguardiente de Pisco, it's the registry of a ship called Our Lady of the Solitude, that was sent from Peru, from Callao, to Acapulco in Mexico. This ship, when arrived to Acapulco, was sold, and the buyer again shipped the whole shipping in the boat towards Central America, towards Guatemala, and in the registries that were presented in Acapulco as well as in Guatemala when the ship arrives, there's the declaration that they were carrying 70 botijas, clay jars of aguardiente de Pisco. And this is repeated in several of the documents that are presented for the payment of the tariffs that should be paid to the Spanish authorities with the arrival of goods to Spanish ports. In the documents that we found, with a lot of the help of my friends from the Embassy of Peru in Guatemala, especially Ambassador Mendez and Carlos Rossi, we see that there's even the name of the person who shipped the clay jars towards Acapulco, even the way the clay jars were found and stored in the ship. All these details are in the registry that the owner of the ship present to the Spanish authorities in Acapulco, as well as in Nicaragua, which was the final destination of the ship. You will see that in this international trade, could we go to the next, please, Meg? The consistent use of the name Pisco is present in trade. In 1742, we have another ship. This is a ship that arrived to Central America, to Guatemala, and in the manifest of the ship says that the ship carries 16 clays of Pisco. They don't even mention spirit or aguardiente. They say 16 clays of Pisco directly. But as well, not only in trade, Pisco was already a very popular product in trade, but as well in law. Let's go to the next. In 1729, in Lima, in the Audiencia de Lima, the legal courts of Lima, there was a lawsuit. This was a lawsuit against the account, a Peruvian count who has left many goods and farms to his sons and daughters. And there was a lawsuit against them. A part of the lawsuit is to determine what was the price, the precise price of aguardiente de Pisco in the year 1726. So in this lawsuit, one of the parts present several witnesses that present documents and give testimony about the price of Pisco in the year 1726. And as you will see, maybe you can read it in this piece of the lawsuit, that it mentions that they were buying aguardiente de Pisco in order to sell it to cities as Guayaquil and Tierra Firme. Tierra Firme was the name that was used to name Central America, especially the Captaincy General of Guayaquil. So for Peruvians, already in the beginning of the 18th century, the trade and the use of name Pisco to establish a trade and the exchange between Peru and many areas of South America and Central America, it was very common. It was a product that was part of our export. So we have been exporting Pisco for more than 300 years. We are a traditional exporter of Pisco since the end of 16th century and the beginning of the end of 17th century and the beginning of the 18th century. Let's go to the next. But also later on in the 19th century, there are many references to the production and the trade of Pisco from Peru. I have chosen some of the most emblematic ones. This is a book that was published by a Swiss traveler, Jacobo Bonschudi. This person traveled through Peru at the beginning of the 19th century, and he published a book about his experiences in Peru. And he has this very particular reference which illustrates the importance of Pisco and how it was distributed in South America. He says that the grapes in Pisco, the grapes are of superior quality, very succulent and sweet. The grape part is used for making brandy, which is extremely good and very well flavored. All Peru and great part of Chile are supplied with this liquor from the valley of Ica. The common brandy is called aguardiente de Pisco because it's shipped from that port. So what Schudi recognizes here is the trade that has been taking place since the end of the 17th century, and it was an industry, a very more than a century old industry in that area of Peru by the beginning of the 19th century. Let's go to the next. mid 18th century, there was a book published in the US. This was a book especially about the West Coast of the US. And there's, in the book, there's the presence of a character named the Colonel who visits San Francisco. And there he has a chat with one of the locals, and the local mentioned Pisco. And the Colonel said, what's Pisco? Oh, come on, I'm going to teach you what is Pisco. And that starts a visit to bars in San Francisco where the popularity of Pisco was enormous. That is because since the gold rush in 1859, many Peruvians went as well to California to try to make the Americas looking for gold in California. And they brought with them Pisco. And Pisco became very popular around San Francisco and California. Even they create, in the 19th century, a very popular drink that was called Pisco Punch, that now we are again drinking with the old recipe from the 19th century. As you may see in this image, in one of the prints included in the book, there's this bar in San Francisco with the title, Drinking Pisco in a San Francisco Saloon. And you will see a character that apparently took too many Pisco Punch because he cannot stand it. There in a chair and a dog is barking. So, but not only was in the US where the aguardiente de Pisco was recognized. You will see the next slide. This is a reference that was found some years ago when I was ambassador in China. And at the end of the 19th century, the Qing Empire started to send missions all over the world. That is because China has been closed by centuries. And the European countries, even the Latin American countries, Peru was present in China from 1874, the first country who established diplomatic relations with the Chinese Empire, the Qing Empire. So in those years, the Qing Empire sent special envoys all over the world to report to the emperor about the customs, the defense, the geography of different countries. And in the year 1889, they sent a mission that went to the US, Cuba, Brazil, and also Peru. And the guy in charge of the mission was this person that you see there, Fu Yunlong, and he reported very thoroughly every place that he touches and describes. And this is the description that is written in that part of his report about the day where he arrives on February the 2nd, 1889 to Pisco, and said, we dock in Pisco. The drink called Pisco comes from here. So at the end of the 19th century, already a report sent by Fu Yulong to the Emperor of China reflects that the Pisco spirit was produced in Peru and was shipped, and the origin was the port of Pisco in Peru. But also, this recognition of the origin of Pisco is not only done in Peru or US or China. Also, our friends at the south in Chile, they recognize the origin of Pisco. Let's see the next slide. One of the most famous linguists in Chile is called Orestes Plat. That's a pseudonym, it's not his real name, but he wrote a dictionary of Chilean expressions. And one of the expressions that is used also in Chile is pisco sour. But when he explains the pisco sour, he explains that the pisco used to prepare pisco sour is used to be called pisco grape spirit, aguardiente de pisco, because it came from that place, Pisco in Peru, the province of Ica in Peru, and says it's fertile and rich in vineyards. The name of the city has become as well known as cognac. The clay jars in which the legitimate grape from Pisco was imported was also known as Pisco. The truth is that the name of the product comes from the Peruvian town. And this is, I would say, the most important linguist in Chile, which recognized that the origin of the drink and the name is the port of Pisco in southern Peru. But not only this linguist give testimony of the origin, but also they are reference to the quality of Pisco. Let's see the next. In mid-19th century, in Spain, there was published this encyclopedia on literature, science, arts, agriculture, industry, and commerce. And this encyclopedia touches on many areas of the trade and production in Spain. And they have a reference to the production of eau de vivre, of spirit in Spain. And he mentions that the author mentions that the spirits are produced with a high level of perfection in Catalonia and Andalusia. And from Catalonia, a great amount is sent to France to be transformed into cognac. And then he mentions a criticism, say generally our spirits are too rough. It will be good for our producers to adopt the vines and the production methods used in Peru to manufacture that incomparable Pisco spirit. So in mid-19th century in Spain, already was a very prestigious recognition of the high quality of the Peruvian spirit. When we go into the 20th century, we have to see that the great market that was in the East Coast or the West Coast of the US for Pisco since mid-19th century abruptly closes. And closes in 1919 because of the prohibition. Let's go to the next one. The prohibition was called the law, that was created in 1990 in the US in order to prohibit the consumption of alcoholic beverage in the US. This prohibition lasts from 1990 to 1933, when was a constitutional amendment changed the situation of the consumption of spirits and alcoholic beverage in general, not only spirits. And at that time, Peru tried to regain the access to the market, especially, as I said, in the West Coast in the US. But suddenly, our embassy realized that in the West Coast of the US, there were products that were circulated with the name of Pisco and that were not coming from Peru. So our embassy in Washington, the ambassador, the person who you will see in that in that slide, Ambassador Manuel de Freire Santander, a very prestigious Peruvian ambassador. He prepared a report to the State Department and to other secretaries in Washington, reporting on the production of Pisco, on the denomination of the spirit, and the claiming the exclusivity of the use of the name for the Peruvian product. The process of this claim done by the Peruvian embassy was very successful, because in the year 1935, let's go to the next slide, the US government issued a regulation on false advertisement of distillate spirits. And there, the US government establishes that only the name of a spirit related to a geographical place could be used if that spirit came from the place named in the label. So in the case of Pisco, only could come from Peru. But not only. In the regulation, the US government put some examples like cognac, Armagnac, Greek brandy, and Pisco brandy. Pisco was one of the examples of a place where the name should be reserved just to the country from where the name or the place is located. Of course, this creates a tremendous disappointment for our friends in Chile, because they wanted as well to export a product they call as well Pisco to the US. But the regulation was a tremendous hurdle to participate in the reopening of the US market. So then they did a very peculiar, I would say, legal maneuver in order to claim as well the possibility to go into the US market. Let's go to the next. The congressman from that area was named Gabriel González Videla, and he wrote a very extensive memory. It has more than 1,500 pages, and in the area, in the section which is related to the Pisco, he indeed confessed that his idea was to, in order to get access to the US market, to change the name of a city in Chile. And this is what he did between December 1935 and February 1936. He proposed a very succinct, very small law changing the name of the city La Unión to Pisco Elqui. And he thought, well, now we have the problem solved. Now we do have as well our Pisco in Chile. Of course, this creates a very strange geographical and administrative paradox, because they used to produce a spirit that they call Pisco, but the name of the place that's supposed to give name to the drink came after the name of the drink. And clearly in the records that are in his memories, but as well in the debates in the Chilean Congress, it's clearly established that this was a maneuver, a strange change of name just to get access to the American market. But as we have this use of the name in trade and in legal procedures, also we can see that the name Pisco has been used in the arts. And this is something that I really cherish looking for, because there are a lot of very interesting mentions of Pisco in different types of art on artistic works. Let's go to the next. You will see there several images. The one on the left, it's a watercolor by Pancho Fierro. Pancho Fierro was one of the great painters of the 19th century in Peru. And there you see one watercolor of a muleteer carrying Pisco clay jars to normally coming from southern Peru to Lima. The second image is about a novel called The Travel Around the World in La Numancia. This was written at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, by one of the greater Spanish writers, Benito Pérez Galdós. And the history is a history of a sailor that goes looking for his daughter that has escaped Spain because she was eloped by a Peruvian guy, which brings her to Peru, and the guy goes after her daughter. And in one of the pages of the novel, he mentioned the products that he drinks and eats in Peru, and he says there that there's this spirit in Peru called Pisco, which is excellent, and if you drink the Pisco, you will see God. That's the expression that is used in the novel. Also, that the novel has several references to Peruvian dishes like arroz con pato, rice with duck, and also the ceviche is mentioned. And as one last praise of Peruvian culture, Benito Pérez Galdós mentions also the Peruvian women as the most beautiful women in the world. I'm certainly he's very right. The next one you see is Herman Melville. Herman Melville, of course, as you all know, is the author of Moby Dick. He wrote a collection of stories called Las Encantadas, and there's a story about a Peruvian woman who was left abandoned in an island in the South Pacific, and that was some years later saw by a ship that went by the island. But the guy who saw from far away this woman in the island says that why he saw the white handkerchief of the woman, maybe that was because that day he was given a ration of Peruvian Pisco by the cook in the ship, and maybe because of that he was very keen to see the white handkerchief in the horizon. Also Kipling, the Nobel Prize, Rudyard Kipling, he wrote a book called From Sea to Sea. In the book, he refers to many places, and one of the places he visited was San Francisco, and there he was presented with a punch supposedly made with Pisco. And the description that Kipling did about this cocktail says it's made of the wings of a cherubim and the poems of the ancient poets, and this is the most sublime product of our age. Geoffrey Housewell is a British writer who wrote a short collection of stories, and the main story is called The Salvation of Pisco Gavar. And Pisco Gavar is one of the characters in the story, and he explains in the book that the guy was called Pisco Gavar, it was his nickname, because he cannot travel in Peru without a very good half liter of Pisco, which was the best tool to have conversation with his friends in the loneliness of Peruvian Andes. And the last one that you see there is Tantan, Tintin, and a very well-known character in European and world culture. This is a story called, in English is Prisoners of the Sun, in Spanish and French is El Templo del Sol, the Templo du Soleil. And in one of the first pages of the Prisoners of the Sun, you see Tantan as his friend, Captain Haddock, who went to Peru to look for his friend who has been kidnapped. And the local authority receives Tantan and Haddock and offers them a glass of this excellent drink of the country, Pisco. And a few drawers later, you see Captain Haddock, which in the story is very famous because he likes very much his drinks. And he says, well, this Pisco, what a Pisco. This is the happiest day in my life. So Pisco made his day very, very, very happy at the time. Nowadays, we have a very well-established distribution and recognition of Pisco all over the world. Let's go to the next. Currently, we have 76 countries that recognize Pisco as a Peruvian appellation of origin of geographical indication all over the world. If we in Peru would ratify the Trans-Pacific Partnership 11, which is in the Congress now, 4 new countries would be included: New Zealand, Malaysia, Brunei, and Australia. So you will see there's a very significant number of countries that recognize Pisco as a Peruvian beverage. Let me tell you a few reflections that I may have on the future, because we have been talking about the past of Pisco as a way to project towards the future. But I think it's important to see that the birth certificate that we have in the history for Pisco, in the case of Peru, should be complemented in the future with measures of projections like the ones that I mentioned here. First, we have to strive to make and show international Peru as a distinctive eau de vivre spirit from Peru. And this would require an improved marketing strategy all over the world. One of the examples that we are talking before this conference was maybe to use the example of tequila. Tequila is a very successful Latin American drink that has been popular for many years all over the world. But one of the examples how the tequila became popular was the margarita. The margarita was one of the tools that Mexico and international bartenders used to make popular the tequila. Maybe we can think on Pisco Sour, which is already very popular, but other different cocktails, because the Pisco from Peru is very versatile, so could be mixed and could create many cocktails. Maybe one idea would be to make popular a drink made of Pisco all over the world. Here in Belgium, we had some years ago an initiative that was promoted by Prom Peru, the agency to promote the image of Peru, and especially Rosario Pajuelo, who used to be the trade officer here in Belgium. This idea was called the Pisco College. We had sessions where we gathered bartenders, distributors, critics for a night to have a speech like the one I'm giving to you now about the history of Pisco, an explanation of the economics around Pisco, and also we make a tasting of Pisco with a Belgian bartender, excellent, who shows the different types of Pisco, what's a pure Pisco, what's a nacholado, what's the difference between a nacholado regular or a mosto verde. So in that way, create awareness of the different types, the different qualities, the different characteristics that the Piscos from Peru has. Also, I think it's essential to reinforce the alliance between the public sector and the private sector in the promotion and the process to make popular Pisco all over the world. The private sector is essential, but should have a very important support from Peru, from the public sector. We in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where I work, and in all our embassies and consulates around the world, the subject of Pisco is a priority. And you will see all over the world, we have days of Pisco, gastronomic festivals where we show Pisco. So for us, it's a never-ending task, the promotion of Pisco. But there, I think the link between the private sector and the public sector should be reinforced. Also, there's an important effort that should be done in terms of registration of Pisco, of the indication of origin or appellation of origin, Pisco, all over the world. And we, within the COPI, the National Agency for Intellectual Property in Peru, we are doing that all over the world. Whenever we have the opportunity, we are registering Pisco in different markets. You saw there in the previous slide some of the titles that were given to Peru. In that case, the two examples were from Thailand and from Ukraine. And also, I think it will be very useful to continue with the research, like the small research or the very modest research I've done in order to find new sources, historical documents, and sources that give the real Peruvian nature and origin of the beverage. Just in the last years, the research that we have done in Washington, Guatemala, even here in Europe, in the archive of Indies in Seville, has given very, very, very interesting results, producing documents that reinforce the real Peruvian origin of the drink. And just to finish this speech, I would like to leave you with a poem that was written by the Spanish author Joaquín Sabina, which I like very much. He wrote the following poem that we will see. Sabina said in a poem, "May there be good Pisco at my wake, and a badass Jalisco corrido to send me away. Breathing is a temporary luxury. There's life beyond this life, but it isn't life." So thank you very much for being with us this evening for Brussels, the morning for America. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments or observations, I will be very honored to try to answer with my little knowledge of Pisco. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Gonzalo. And you're very humble. Your book is not a modest investigation. It is incredible. Cami and I were talking about that recently, so we congratulate you.